Hello, I'm Katie Woods. I'm a director in our corporate reporting services team, focused on sustainability reporting landscape. And I'm back with our weekly update on the latest ongoing in the global sustainability reporting arena. Two key areas I want to focus on this week. The first being just following on from the previous weekly video on how you disclose the sustainability risks and opportunities which you have identified. And then secondly, to move on to the latest updates from the ISSB, the International Sustainability Standard Board, and their latest board meeting, which was held in December 2023. So let's focus on the disclosure of sustainability risks and opportunities. As mentioned in the previous weekly video, when identifying risks and opportunities, there's a particular algorithm that needs to be followed. That is that you go through an approach in order to identify the risks and opportunities which will be addressed through disclosures in the sustainability report. Once those sustainability risks and opportunities have been identified, there's a need to put them through the materiality filter, an area which I will cover in a future video. But once those relevant risks and opportunities have been determined, then what do you do? How do you work out what to disclose? Well, the first port of call is obviously standards that you're looking at to determine if there are specific disclosure requirements in those standards in order to determine what needs to be given in the sustainability report. But as I've mentioned before, the IFRS sustainability disclosure standards are very much principles based, and so there are not long lists of disclosure requirements that you might find in other standards. So what does that mean? Well, it means that there's a need to look elsewhere in order to determine what to disclose. Again, there's an algorithm, there's an approach which is given in IFRS S1, which helps to identify those disclosures. Starting off, apart from the framework that you're currently using, the next approach is the requirement. So it says shall refer to and consider the Sustainability Accounting Standards Board's standards. Those standards cover over 77 industries and have a number of disclosure requirements. But don't forget, in the same as identifying your sustainability risks and opportunities, if there is not an appropriate SASB standard, there's not a requirement to use another one. It's just that there's a need to refer to it and consider it, but there are other approaches that can be used. The next is to look at CDSB and their water and biodiversity standards. Then the latest pronouncements following similar frameworks, and then following disclosures in the same industry that other entities might be using. And that really helps with the comparability of sustainability reporting. The final area to look at is the ESRS, the European Sustainability Reporting Standards, and the GRI, the Global Reporting Initiative. Both of those have got significant amounts of disclosures that may well help with the risks and opportunities that have been identified. But it's well worth checking that these disclosures relate to a shareholder approach rather than the wider stakeholder approach, which both the ESRS and GRI take into consideration from their framework's perspective. So that's what you need to do in order to determine your disclosures. I'll cover other areas of the standards in other weekly videos. But I did want to just touch on a couple of the decisions that were made at the last ISSB board meeting held in December 2023. The first was in relation to the Sustainability Accounting Standard Board's standards, the SASB standards, where there have been two things really that had happened. First of all, an exposure draft had been issued earlier in 2023, covering the methodology to update those SASB standards to make them applicable for the wider market than that they were initially written for. So that methodology had been, as I say, out for exposure, and in general, most agreed with the approach, with some highlights of areas of concern. But overall, the board agreed to follow the methodology approach, and it is likely that that approach will be published in final in 2023. Note that these industry standards just relate to the application of IFRS S1. From IFRS S2 perspective, there are climate-related industry standards incorporated into IFRS S2. They're taken from the Sustainability Accounting Standard Board, the SASB standards, but they are actually within those IFRS sustainability disclosure standards. Two other areas that were covered in the board meeting. The first one was on the disclosure taxonomy. The disclosure taxonomy is a way of tagging or identifying particular disclosures that are required by the standard on a consistent basis across all entities in order for users to be able to identify the relevant information relatively easily. The summarised feedback about the approach was well received, and as a consequence, the board concluded that there'll be balloting process during the first half of 2024 in order to go forward with that approach to the taxonomy. The final area they discussed were the agenda priorities. So the request for comment on agenda priorities again came out in summer 2023, and the board have been discussing this over the last couple of meetings as to where they should focus next. There was clear feedback that they should focus on areas for helping with the implementation of the ISSB standards. But over the next board meeting, they've committed to determine which other thematic areas they'll focus on. So that's it from me this week. Thank you for joining me. Hope you enjoyed our weekly updates and look forward to seeing you soon. Thanks a lot.